Hey, Gavin Palmer. My struggle is with heresy. Paul, the Apostle Paul, he used this word like heretikos, and it would mean someone who divides. And I find that throughout my life, I'll say things which upset the calm, upset the peace. I've done this my entire life. And then the question in my heart, like the question I raise to you and to God, is when I share my observations honestly, with kindness, gentleness, patience, I'm carrying a load and I can unload. I guess that's what I'm doing is unloading. And I have to be careful about when I unload. I don't want to just unload everything like on my 7-year-old son. So, like literally, like if I was carrying 200 pounds, if I were to hand that off to my 7-year-old son, it would break him. It'd hurt him. And so I have to be careful about unloading because, yeah, and in order to avoid unloading, like, and the metaphysical reality, the truth about the metaphysical reality onto people is that, especially on the internet, is we don't know what everyone can handle. And so we can practice cultivating relationships so that we can try and get a sense of what people can handle. Because, yeah, if we unload on just strangers, whatever is weighing us down, whatever the load we're carrying, if we unload on a stranger, then we could end up creating a stumbling block and causing them harm. And so there's so many things that I carry that I've never, I haven't met anyone that seems to be able to handle the load that I'm handling. But I try to be careful with it. And I can't just like share it all on the internet. I don't want to hurt anybody. Now, I do want to, as I get to know people, for example, my wife, I don't just unload everything on her. And I've asked her before, it's like, hold up, you're unloading too much on me too quickly. And so we have a limited capacity to carry a load. It becomes stressful, and it can become so stressful that it breaks you. And so it's good to know people and know how much their capacity to carry a load. And so in order to know people, we have to practice loving people, practice being able to see their world, to know what they can handle. And it's easier to do that with my wife that I'm with, every day. Way easier to do that than to do it with someone that I've never met that's on the internet. And that's just the way it is. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the things I've put out on the internet and shared with people over time is just, I think it's overloading. And so when people look at me, they just say, I can't, they just instinctively say, they instinctively push me away, like, because they know that they just will be broken if they were to just give attention to this load that I'm carrying. And that's, and I'm learning to love people better so that I can try to encourage people so that they can be built up so that then they could carry more load, right? Because, what Jordan Peterson likes to say, carry your cross. I think he probably took that from others. I think maybe the Apostle Paul talked about carrying your load, sharing some responsibility. I need to check that. I'm going to look that up right now. Yeah, so I like to use GPT-4 as a teacher. It is a study aid, And so I just asked GPT-4, I said, did the New Testament ever encourage us to carry our cross? And some of you already know the answer. But like in Matthew 16, then Jesus said to his disciples, whosoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. Mark 8:34 as well, whosoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Luke 9:23, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. And Luke 14:27, and whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. And so we can, I don't know exactly what a pastor does, but maybe a pastor is someone who helps people become stronger, encourages people to become stronger so that they can carry the cross. And at some point, there's a point in time when we're not prepared and we can be prepared. I like to think God can help prepare us to carry a cross and invites us to do it. And we have and we can say no. Because if God didn't give us a choice, then God wouldn't be worth loving. That tends to be the way I look at it. I may be wrong. But yeah, there's so much that I'm carrying, and we're not all disciples. When Jesus went out and he would speak differently to his disciples than he spoke to the masses and to his enemies. Like he said different things to different people. And so, yeah, when I'm creating something on the internet, it's like the internet is not filled with people who are disciples. But the internet is filled with people who have the potential to become disciples. So I have to be careful about overloading. Now, I can help my general guidance, what I received, I think what God was putting out, because I was told, I started writing for the church, and then I went to church, and then the pastor ended up speaking on the subject of stress and how to handle stress. And so what I wrote about was this, I've been essentially started and said, to those who wish to glorify God, I have been given the ability to have visions. And so that's how I started. And then I tried to empathize with the reader or the listener. And it's like, I know that many people would say, whoa. And that is like a micro stress. And so I went into this micro stress, how our first response is to become defensive. You can fight, you can flight, or you can freeze. And then the second response that I would encourage is to notice the defensiveness, because if we don't notice it, then we can just be taken control. We can become possessed by this thing, by the mind, which, has been trained to perceive threats and respond to them in order to defend the self and protect the self. The mind, we inherited this from generations of humans, have passed this trait on to us. It's an instinct. And so we can notice our instinct, and this is probably a pattern for all of our instincts, whether we weren't trying to procreate or trying to just get our nutrition or anything. It's like there is an instinct that can be dangerous, which can lead us to do things which aren't good. And based on experience, I remember someone threw a golf ball way up in the air, and I took off running, so I did a flight. And I went up under a tree, and that golf ball hit every single limb and landed right on my head. And if I had frozen, it would have been better. If I had tried to fight, probably would have, that might not have worked out. But if I had frozen instead of fleeing, it probably would have been better. I could have frozen. I could have watched that golf ball and tried to see where it was going. I've had this pattern where I run away, and that will cause me to get in trouble. And then I've had times where I try to fight, and that will cause me to get in trouble. And this kind of fight, flight responses, if you have the time, it's good to try and notice, to freeze and notice. Don't freeze with your mind, but notice it, and then you can say, well, hey, what if I surrendered? And this is what the pastor at the Highlands, he talked about surrendering. And so you can say, what if I surrendered? What's the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario if I surrendered? Take a little time. And sometimes it takes more time than other time. Different events require more time to surrender and process. And Pastor Chris talked about how you can get news. Father has cancer, right? And that's shock. It feels like you got kicked in the belly by a mule, right? So stress comes in many different varieties, and sometimes it's the stress of, here's someone who said that they have been given, that God has given them visions. Yeah, God has given me visions and taken them away. And then as I continued to write, I did, I think important, I became humble. And I think when you submit, you do go through a humbling, and then you can also, that can end up being in service. So the stress, that which has caused you stress, can end up leading to you being in service to glorify God. So these things which cause pain and suffering can end up helping to glorify God. And so what's cool is that I think there are many disciples. There are many people trying to carry their cross. There are many people receiving visions, and we receive different visions, and some of us see things that other people don't see. Like each one of us can see things that other people don't see. And even people who aren't disciples, like every human has a perspective and sees different things. And so we can cooperate. Now, I experienced something where I addressed. Now, this word address, what is an address? Well, when you have a wound, you can put on a dressing, and you can put on a veil to cover things up, because there may be something that's very sensitive, and you might want to protect it. And maybe you have to be careful when you're, and I use this word addressing, like if you're removing the dressing and removing the veil, you have to be careful. It has to happen gently, patiently, kindly, with love for the person that and what they're sensitive to. And so, I did an addressing, something that's kind of like anytime you have a disagreement with someone, that is an addressing and a confrontation, and you can actually undress something that reveals something that's very sensitive. And so this process of addressing, there's a way to do it. It includes getting to know people personally, loving them, and hopefully what could be a stumbling block for some stranger on the internet would end up becoming a stepping stone. That's the hope and the prayer. Because, it's interesting, these stones, the idea of the stones, the stone that the builder refused becomes the head cornerstone, and the stone can get refused and thrown in the path and can become a stumbling block, and then a stone could end up being stepping stones. Like that stone, depending on where you put it on different people's paths, can be a stepping stone, it can be a stumbling stone, and it can be a cornerstone, like all three. So, to any of you who, I guess y'all probably aren't the people who I threw out stumbling stones that probably aren't listening. But yeah, if you ever do listen, I definitely apologize for unloading stones into people's paths, which can end up causing them to stumble. That's a It's not. I do not like upsetting people, and then, but simultaneously, I am. Yeah, I do also benefit from trying to unload my burdens. And previously, I would not unload my burdens to God. I would not pray to God, and so I've started practicing prayer. And so now that I unload more onto God, um, I've actually been able to get better at unloading more gently and kindly with others, and I'm still practicing. So, yeah, when I mess up because I'm not perfect, um, I'll ask for forgiveness, and because I'm learning. I'm learning to be patient, gentle, and kind, and be loving, such that I don't create stumbling blocks for people, such that that thing that could be a stumbling block for many people would be a stepping stone. Could be a cornerstone. All right. I love you. Amen. Just a man. Just a man. Not really. All right. Have a good one.